Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in today. We spoke with Arjun from Docket AI, and he had a really interesting story as a three-time founder, spent a lot of time at ZoomInfo, one of the most popular go-to-market solutions in our space. And he spoke about AI agents taking over the solutions engineering role in a go-to-market team and being a true AI companion for people that are trying to get information that's relevant to their customers as soon as possible. Really excited for you to check it out. He had some very interesting takes and really appreciate you joining us. Hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone. Very excited to welcome Arjun to the podcast. I want to start by welcoming Arjun to the podcast. Welcome. We're so excited to have you. I want to just jump right into it. So you have a ton of experience in the go-to-market space. You've been here for a while. Would love to start with your background and how it led to the start of Docket AI.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for having me, Joe. It's great to hang out. For good or bad, I have been in the GTM circuit for a really long time. So I started my first company when I was 23, pretty much right out of the college. And after failing in 4 products, my fifth product became like a sales intelligence product in the newer sense. This was 2013, and sales intelligence was not a space at that time. But we ended up building a system that could do enrichment and go to prospecting, kind of like the Clearbit before Clearbit, with a little bit of ZoomInfo element, which is the human intelligence part of it. So we were doing it in India. I am originally from Kerala, India. So we grew that company to about 72 people. We had a bunch of customers, 70% of our customers in the US. We had a Chrome plugin before most people really had a Chrome plugin. We had about 110,000 users for the Chrome plugin from 150 countries with literally $0 in marketing. We had only raised about $380,000 for the company. At 72, when I was doing my pre-Series A raise, an existing partner, Full Contact, based in Denver, Colorado, they wanted to acquire the company, and I decided to sell the company, and everybody joined Full Contact. That ended up, interestingly, the first product exit in my state in India. So you can imagine the nascency of the ecosystem there. So that happened in 2016. Then they moved me over to the US to complete the integration because, it was a 72 people, rather large team from a different country. So I moved over, completed the integration, grew my team to about 160 people, was the head of data strategy. So like very deep into sales, marketing, data, identity resolution, all of that sales related spaces, I guess. From there, I moved on, consulted for a bunch of companies. Most of the companies, like whether it is Inside View, Lead IQ, Ring Lead, Discover.org, ZoomInfo, DNB, like almost all the names that I have probably consulted a little bit for them in data sourcing or procurement or something like that. That I did in 2018 for about 9 months, and in October, I decided to do my second company. The company's name was Incent. The name was intent and consent of the buyer. So that's how Incent name came together. I am a believer in real-time conversations when it comes to B2B, because I believe that the B2B folks are like, I want to know details now. I don't want to submit a form and wait for like 3 days. So that's how we built Incent. It was like drift.com. So Drift was a front runner, qualified, and us, we were kind of competing with Drift. We were mid-market ABM focused. Grew that company to 35 people, raised about $2.7 million. And I was raising my Series A. I was close to it. But at that time, Henry Schuck, the CEO of ZoomInfo, who I had consulted in the past, kind of wanted to buy the company. So I was like, okay, 2021, good time to sell the company, thankfully. So I sold the company. Everybody joined ZoomInfo. Then I became the SVP, Senior Vice President of ZoomInfo. Going in, I built out the account-based marketing platform for ZoomInfo that competed with 6sense, Demandbase, Rollworks of the world. So today, if you look at the Gartner Magic Quadrant, there is 6sense, Demandbase, and ZoomInfo. That ZoomInfo thing was built by my team and me from scratch. It feels surreal. Then from there, that became the fastest growing product in the history of ZoomInfo back then. Then Henry asked me to take over also the data part of ZoomInfo, which is pretty much the entire data set of ZoomInfo. I became the chief data officer, hundreds of people reporting to me, a big portfolio value, about 15 product lines reporting up to me. I had the opportunity to sit in the board meetings, be part of executive offsites, to kind of see how a 1.25 billion revenue company operates from my startup background was phenomenal. Thanks to my team and the trust that Henry had on me, I was successful in transitioning from a startup guy to an executive. I did that for a little over 2 years and then um, started Docket in September of 2023. In Docket, we are building an AI sales engineer, which I'm sure we'll talk more about. At this company, we have raised about $20.3 million, 5.3 in seed, and 15 million in Series A.
That's incredible. And everyone knows Henry and ZoomInfo. So that's why I think that's just one of the most unique companies to have gotten a chance to work at. They're one of the few that have hit that unicorn status when they did. And I think you joined them right after everything kind of merged up with some other companies that people probably know. So Discover.org and Chorus and all of those other platforms. That was all part of the ecosystem when you were there. Is that right?
Chorus was right after our acquisition, so I was in ZoomInfo when we brought in Chorus, but the conversation was on even before I went in there. ZoomInfo is an iconic company for sure. If you look at the last decade of the SaaS ecosystem, you cannot talk about the growth in SaaS without talking about ZoomInfo. Not only as a company, I mean, from a company standpoint, the revenue 1.25 billion, then the profitability of 43% margins. Then not only that, but the impact that ZoomInfo had in letting other companies reach market. See, without ZoomInfo, there is no Apollo or there's no Seamless. That's an extreme statement, but investors put in a lot more money into other data companies seeing the books of ZoomInfo when ZoomInfo went public in 2019, right? So, and it was almost impossible to think that a data company could go public before ZoomInfo did that. And you needed a ZoomInfo and a Henry to make that happen. Yes, it is one of the iconic companies to me, and I think they have done amazing for SMBs and mid-market to hit their market.
That's awesome. And what it does is it gave you exposure before Docket AI to pretty much every go-to-market role that there is. So sales engineers, salespeople, CS. How have you seen the gaps that, how have the gaps that they've had that you've probably gotten a chance to see up close lead to some of the stuff that you wanted to build with Docket? What are some of those gaps that really inspired you after, being at a company that big that made you want to jump into this, a couple years ago?
Absolutely. When you are a CEO, you're also a seller. You have to sell. So without any sales training, I have been a seller for the past 12, 13 years. So I have that individual sales experience in my own way. Then when I went to ZoomInfo and we put out this account-based marketing platform out there in the market, that was a phenomenal learning phase for me. I saw how much effort it takes after the product build, how much help that the sellers need to actually make a complex sell. The buyers are more knowledgeable than ever before. Competition is more than ever before. The budget is tougher than ever before. So right from the first call, there is so much technical questions, deeper conversations, competitive intel, objections that are going flying left, right, and center. And the sellers need a ton of help. And this help is given to them either using a legacy sales enablement tool or by a sales engineer or a solution engineer, as they call it. No company has enough sales engineer or solution engineers. They are always having like 3 or 4 times the request that they can handle, right? On top of the RFPs that they fill, on top of the documents that they generate, on top of the training that they do. So when I saw this, and I was the sales engineer in a lot of those initial conversations, this problem was very evident to me that account executives need help when they sell complex problems or complex solutions. And as the companies are building more and more, as more products are getting acquired, this problem is kind of increasing day by day. This was the unique insight or the problem statement that kind of gave its way into Docket, like the thread of the problem. And the thesis that came into my mind was, if you think about it, all the questions that a new buyer is asking for a company, they have been asked and answered before. It is somewhere in that enterprise. It is on a Slack chat or a Gong recording or a Chorus recording or a Word document or a sales enablement tool or a Confluence or a release note. It is out there in the enterprise in a structured or unstructured form, but it's humanly impossible to pull all of these things together into one place, keep it updated, make sure it is accurate, and then make it available for account executives just in time is almost impossible. If you take a given company, the amount of go to market knowledge that is documented is 5 to 7%. The other 93% is in unstructured conversations on Slack and call or logged in somebody's head, right? This was the unique insight. And that's when I saw AI coming in thick and fast. So for inside me, I was like, for the first time ever, we have a real opportunity to solve this problem using technology. Using AI with this tribal knowledge, you bring it together and you can potentially build an AI sales engineer. That is how Docket came into existence.
That's amazing. And I've personally, one of the interesting things about sales engineers, just to be honest, is it's also a non quota carrying part of a go to market team. But in many cases, they're the one helping close the deal because the buyers are expecting to get really deep into what the product can actually do. And I think on the
Exactly.
other part of it is we work with a lot of startups, and their whole mission early on is to ship new updates and features really quickly. So even if you
Right.
want to do that, it's a very big effort to constantly keep the full team up to date. And it's something that we see all the time. And one thing that I want to highlight is AI. So obviously, this is everywhere now. I think our perspective
Yep.
is AI agents are going to have a huge part in how people go to market. It's creating a whole new landscape. And I'm really curious, what is your take on AI agents, AI workflows, and how does that fit into everything you're building at Docket?
We have been huge believers in AI and agents right from day one. So if you look at the oldest document of Docket, it would still say we are an AI sales engineer. So very early, we decided we were one of the early companies decided that we are going to be an agent. We are going to take a persona. We are going to be a verticalized agent. All of that. The thesis behind that, Joe, is that the way I believe the future of B2B enterprise AI is going to be is there will be two kinds of AI. One is the generic layer. Today, there are a bunch of generic answering engines, which can be there is Perplexity recently came in, OpenAI is there, Google has an enterprise search, then Amazon has Q, Atlassian has Rovo, there is Glean. So these are all those enterprise search layer, which is going across the enterprises. And quickly, you will start seeing those systems becoming from search to answers to assistance. When is my meeting with Joe? It is at 11:30. Can you add a task to Asana at 11 o'clock for me to prep for my meeting with Joe? So this would happen with these generic assistants. And every future worker in a B2B company can imagine to have like an enterprise search system at their fingertips. That will happen through one of these systems. More likelihood that a Microsoft or a Google or an Amazon will get you there because you are already deep into most of the things there. So that is the generic layer. But that wouldn't take care of all the verticalized needs of an enterprise. So to take care of the more verticalized needs, there'll be verticalized agents. So Docket is the AI sales engineer. At least I'm sure some of your listeners have heard about Harvey, which is the AI legal, which is specifically for legal, right? So there'll be Devin, which is a software engineer, right? That's a persona, that's verticalized agent. There'll be one for procurement, one for accounting. So enterprise will have, generic assistant layer and verticalized agent layer. And that's how I think of agents as such and how the future is going to look like.
That makes complete sense. That's exciting. And what it makes me want to see is I'd love to look inside the platform and see how you're accomplishing this with Docket.
Absolutely. One of the key things about agents, the way I think about it, Joe, is that on top of the thesis that I mentioned, an agent should be able to take a task or a responsibility and deliver a quantum of work for the user or the human. It shouldn't be like, imagine the earlier world where you had a Zendesk. Zendesk was a tool. You can respond to support tickets even without Zendesk, right? You can do it in Gmail, but that's not easy. But Zendesk made it way more easier for me to respond to support tickets. So that is the marginal increment. Now we are talking about more quantum of work. So as we get into Docker demo, and I would love to show it to you, let me transition it to a screen share, and I'll show you how we are thinking about it and how our system is delivering the quantum of work. And I'll show you a few things so it makes sense. Let me share my screen here, and I want to start showing you our ability to specifically fill out RFPs. So this is our UI. We also have Slack and Teams we'll show in a minute. So let's specifically talk in RFP because this is a key part of an AI or a sales engineer today in a big company. So the way our system works is for you to complete an RFP, all you do is upload the RFP into the system. The system takes a few seconds to kind of fully read through all of the sheets, understands how many sheets are there, and then it's coming back and asking, hey, where should I look for questions specifically, and where should I put answers for each sheet? This particular example only has one sheet. Then you also have the ability to say, hey, for this particular uh, file or security questionnaire or RFP or anything that I'm filling, I want to only choose a few files to choose from, or I don't want to use Slack as a place to take information from. So you have full control in terms of what are the sources from which Docket agent is pulling the information to fill out this particular RFP. Once you feel good about that, you click on generate. And what happens is the system is reading through the headings, the subheadings. This is what I mean by quantum of work, right? So you just gave the responsibility to fill out this RFP, to understand this RFP, to process through all of the sheets, everything to the agent. And the agent is doing all of that processing. It is understanding the questions. There you go. It came back. You can see these are the questions that are there in RFP. And you're seeing that it's a real-time generation that's happening. So the system is saying there are 25 questions and I'm starting to generate the answers for these. And you're seeing that we have added 3 columns. There is the answers column, confidence column, and the references column. And in a few seconds, you will start seeing answers pop up.
And just
And these
for
answers are coming from, hey, go ahead.
just one quick thing on this, and especially for those that haven't gone through this process potentially. So these requests for proposals, they're usually coming in from larger enterprises, and this is how you're going to close this big deal. Um, and the experience typically is like frantically searching for all of this information everywhere. Is that what you've
Yeah.
seen too with customers that are leveraging this?
Absolutely. A typical RFP takes 3 weeks to 3 months to turn around, depending on the size of the RFP. And we have seen huge RFPs of 350 questions, like, 7 sheets, 8 sheets, Word documents, all of that. So all of that work, we just completed 25 questions, just like that in about 30 seconds. And now what I can do is, I, as a human, I can read through and verify. Now, if I don't like something, I can click here and say, hey, you know what? This is pretty good, but I want you to regenerate, or I want this to shrink, or I want you to expand. I want to turn it into a list. Or I can say, hey, this was not about security. This is about compliance. So I can tell the system, hey, rewrite this as with compliance as the context. And the system would rewrite it accordingly. So the work that a bunch of humans had to do in terms of filling, verification, all of that is completely taken by the system. And you have the ability to share this with additional people for collaboration if you want to. And finally, you can simply export it out. So the 3 weeks or 3 months of your work just came down to 1.5 minutes. This is the power of an agent delivering a full quantum of work.
And going back to what you mentioned about search and enterprise search, the process there is essentially searching each one of these questions individually, hoping that they pull in the
Yeah.
information. And they may not even be looking into systems like Slack, which a ton of early stage companies work with.
Yeah.
Is that one of the biggest differentiators that you would say exists with what you're building and some of these enterprise search platforms like Glean that, people might have seen?
Glean is an enterprise search solution, which is a generic solution that is trying to answer questions from product and engineering and HR and all of that. Our real value is in our ability to kind of process the information specifically for a sales use case. I'll give you an example. Imagine that you ask me a question, hey, do you integrate with Marketo? The factual answer is no. Imagine that the factual answer is no. You say that the deal is dead. So if you ask that question to Docket, the way Docket answers is, Docket will say, we do not directly integrate with Marketo. However, our integration with Salesforce is so good that you will get our data into Marketo in near real time. So it is the same answer. It is basically saying we do not have an integration with Marketo, but it is saying in a way a solution engineer tells that, and it's giving a solution to the problem. And we are able to do that because we learn from the best sellers. So continuing with the demo, if you go to our system, go to the settings, in people, you can say Anup Thomas, who is my CTO co-founder, I can mark him as a subject matter expert. And the system would go historically look at all the questions, answers, calls, and documents that Anup has created across everything that the company has, and will weigh his answers slightly better than the rest of the tribal knowledge. So the system becomes a clone of your best performers, best product specialists, and best sellers. And that's how the system learns. This kind of a knowledge graph and a generic enterprise search cannot do.
That's awesome. And you're totally right. In the middle of a sales cycle, you have to be able to explain things in a way that still figures out what solution, objection handle
Yeah.
it. It can't just be a quick
Yeah.
output of the factual answer. So makes total sense.
Yeah. And by the way, Joe, we also have the instant answers, right? So let me the Slack use case that you mentioned, let me show that to you. A big way in which our customers use us is on Slack. So let me pull that up and show a quick demo. This is our internal Slack that you are seeing. Whenever our salespeople have a question, all they have to do is just come to Docket and ask as deep of a question as they want. Let me ask a very specific question in Docket. Thus, RFP and Q&A. These are two modules of ours. Follow different data pipelines or something like that. So it's a very specific question. Only a very deep technical person in the company will know the answer. The moment the question is getting asked, it's going through all the structured and unstructured data, removing all the outdated data, learning from the best sellers, and there you go. You got the answer back. Yes, in Docket, RFP and Q&A follow different data pipelines to generate answers. Q&A follow-up question and is a conversational agent. For RFP, the system is optimized to fill out RFPs. And then finally, it is adding a sentence saying, while the facts and quality remain the same, the way of answering is different. And there's a confidence score. The reference is a previously happened Slack conversation. So there's no structured data from which this answer is getting pulled. So this is also a key part of how people use our system. Let me show you how somebody can use Docket when they are an account executive getting an email. Imagine that I'm an account executive. I got an email from my buyer saying, it is interesting, but we use Notion. I was wondering how Docket is different. All you do is just copy the question, go to our Chrome plugin and ask the question. You can even put a big text, multiple questions, whatever. The system is very smart to figure out where is the question, what are the questions, what should I answer. It'll go through the same exact knowledge base underneath, and there you go. It came back and gave me a full answer for this based on 2 references from previous Slack chat. Now, since this is email, I want to go further and say, hey, write me a brief email about how Docket is different. And instead of giving me like a big blurb, the system converted that into a numbered text. All I have to do is copy, close, reply, paste. There you go. So whatever would have taken me like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes of search and then writing and then confirming and verifying, all of that is taken care. Now I have a very specific competitive intel answer on why Docket is so much better than Ocean AI.
Wow. That's unbelievable. Okay, one question for you. How do you deal with questions that no one's asked or answered before?
The underlying facts is what matters. We do not make up answers, just to be clear. The system does not hallucinate. The system does not make up answer. So if it is a fact that we have never seen before, then we won't be able to answer. Like, why is the sky blue? If somebody asks the question to that on Docket, we'll be like, I don't know the answer to this question because we are well grounded in the enterprise knowledge. So let me answer it in 2 ways. The system answers, we see salespeople asking 4 kinds of questions. One, enterprise file search. Where is the master deck I want to present? Or where is the case study with ZoomInfo? Second is retrieval questions. Hey, do we integrate with Marketo? That's a retrieval question. It's a fact that they are retrieving. There is a reasoning question, which is what are the top three objections that I will get when I sell Docket, and how do I field them? So it's a reasoning question. You have to first figure out what does an objection mean, then come up with the list of objections. Then you have to sort it to the top objection, pick the top three objection, find what is the right objection handling for each of those objection, and then so it's a multi-step, multi-hop reasoning question. Finally, the scenario question. If I implement Docket and I have 110 salespeople, what is my ROI? That's a scenario question. So these are the four types of questions that we answer. As you can imagine, the reasoning questions and scenario questions in many cases are not questions that we have seen in the past, but the facts we have seen. So we will reason out the answer. But if the facts are not there, then we tell them that we do not know the answer to this question, but I will be able to take this to an SME, get the answer, and come back to you. Do you want us to do that? And if they say yes, and then we will send it to the right Slack channel, get the answer, learn it, and then push it to the first person.
So, for the teams that you're talking about, is it fair to say that if you're in B2B tech and you're selling or you're building a sales org or you're building a go to market, those are the types of questions that those people will ask? And Docket is essentially the next step for not only agents, but also for what solutions or sales engineers are. Is that the main market that you guys are going after?
We behave as sales engineers to account executives. So our job is to enable the account executives. I believe that the legacy sales enablement tools, which are pretty much content management systems, where someone like a product marketer has to write out a piece of structured content, put in, label it, tag it, folder it, that world is over. So we believe that this is the right way to enable the account executives. And in the future, you would see us doing more and more things, right? You would see Docket joining the calls. And then when you and I are talking, Joe, you ask me a question that I don't know the answer to. I'll just ask, hey, Docket, do you know the answer to that question? And the system would speak up and will pull up the right slides or pull up even the right demo to kind of show you how exactly, to answer that question. So we want account executives to feel a lot more confident that Docket is there as their sidekick all the time.
And to contextualize that, and last big thing that I was curious about is what are some of the customers that you've worked with and some of the success that they've had?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of customers, but if we pick a few of our top customers, these are ZoomInfo, Demandbase, Whatfix, Vulture, Clarify, a bunch of them. They use us for different use cases. A lot of people use us for instant answers, many use us for RFPs. By and large, when we look at our success metrics, we increase the win rate by about 12%. We increase the ACV by about 10%. We reduce the onboarding time by about 15% for salespeople. So those are some of the metrics that we are impacting in a significant way. And we are obsessed on win rate. If you ask me what am I most passionate about? So there is clear statistics that if a sales engineer joins a call, there's a 32% improvement in win rate. Clear data. So that is the metric that we can hit. If our AI sales engineer is so good, the win rate improvement is going to be 30%.
Wow. And that has some big implications on the growth model, and it affects every other part of how someone's going to market trying to hit the targets each year. This was awesome, Arjun. That is one of the coolest applications of AI agents, and I feel like it's leapfrogging a lot of different solutions that we've implemented, we've seen, and it's actually solving some of the problems that AEs and go to market teams face every day. So, thank you so much for going through everything, and we really appreciate you spending time with us.
Thanks a lot, Joe. This was super. I mean, your questions were so good and prompting that I could really get into the depth of the things. And thanks for letting me be. Appreciate and love the hangout.